When Elektron came out with the Analog Heat+FX not too long ago, I was honestly scratching my head. $1,000 for this? Now don't get me wrong, it looks cool, it sounds great from the demos that I've heard, and if Elektron wanted to send me a unit to test out for free, I wouldn't say no. But for $1,000, it's pretty underwhelming, and there's better alternatives out there. The best one, I think, is this Fractal Audio FM3. Now, the FM3 and Fractal Audio in general is no stranger in the guitar community, as their gear is highly rated and widely used by some of the biggest names in the industry, but they seem to be a lot less known in the synth world. The FM3 is a digital amp modeler and effects processor that's got tons of different amp and cabinet models, as well as a plethora of effects from overdrive and distortion to modulation effects and delay and reverb. And I'm not going to go through all of the ins and outs and everything about it because there's already a lot of videos out there by people who are a lot more talented than me, but I will go through the key details that I think make this a much better value than the Analog Heat+FX in your synth setup, and we're also going to play with some of the effects. For starters, the Heat+FX is $9.99 brand new, and for $100 more, you could get the FM3. Pro tip, they just came out with the Mark II version of this unit that has 10% more processing power and bigger scribble strips, so you're gonna start seeing a lot of these hit the used market if you're looking to save yourself a couple $100s. On the hardware side of things, this thing is compact, built like a tank, lots of ins and outs and features on this, and the best part is it fits right in my backpack. I play this thing live with guitar at least once or twice a month, and it's super convenient. All I need to bring is just this and my volume pedal and another foot switch, additional foot switch with it, since it's only got 3 foot switches, but these are multifunction foot switches, so I mainly use this to toggle between scenes, but you can also switch effects on or off with this, and you can also program it to do other things. On the back panel, you've got a headphone out and USB port, which is great because I use this as my audio interface at home and it sends audio over USB. It's got a guitar input as well as 2 stereo inputs. It's got unbalanced stereo outputs plus XLR outputs, which is great because if you're playing this live, you can just go plug directly into front of house without needing to go through a separate DI box. And with my synth setup, I use this as my end of chain mastering box to add compression, overdrive, and EQ to tighten everything and add some punch, and as well as adding reverb and stereo enhancer to widen the sound and have better instrument separation. The Heat+FX has 8 analog dirt circuits as well as 7 digital effects. The FM3 is all digital, but nowadays no one is going to be able to tell the difference between digital and analog effects because the digital signal processing has just come so far with gear like the Kemper, the Helix stuff, Neural DSP Quad Cortex. And if you really need analog drive circuits, just go and pick up a couple Boss pedals, a Proco Rat, or a Big Muff, all of which you can get for under $100 each. And give yourself a pat on the back for using analog gear because you're not going to be impressing anyone except yourself. So now I'm going to play some music from the Octatrack into the FM3 so that we can test out and hear some of the effects on this. I've got the PC editor open here for the FM3. It's called FM3 Edit, and this is where you go and tweak all of your parameters. Here's the song that we're going to be listening to. I'll play it first without any of the effects on. And here it is with all of the effects on. Again. And this is my kind of basic preset that I use just for mastering to get everything tight and sounding good. I'll go through each of these, turn them on and off so we can hear exactly what each pedal is doing. Turning these. So first effect in our chain is a multi-band compressor. They have just regular compressors as well, but I like using the multi-band compressor to have a bit more control over each frequency. So this is with it on, C with it off. You can hear with this compressor on, it gets rid of some of the low-end muddiness from the kick that you don't want, tightens that end up a bit, and then really brings out the highs for the snare and the hi-hat. Here everything just sounds buried in the mix. Let's turn on the drive. Here that this adds punch to it, both in the low end with the kick and the bass, and the highs sparkle a bit more with it as well. This is a pretty low gain drive right here. It's more a boost, so adds an extra punch without distorting the sound too much. Got the chorus to thicken things up and add some stereo width to it. And we've got a parametric EQ. I'll usually use an EQ to cut out some of the low end and any muddiness that I hear. Got a high pass filter here. Can change the slope. There. Just turn on the reverb. Just on a small hall algorithm, so it doesn't sound too big. Just adds an extra bit of space so that it doesn't sound so dry. And then lastly, have a stereo enhancer. Again, to add a bit more width and stereo imaging and better instrument separation. So now I'm going to go through and play with individual effects blocks with some samples going on so that we can really experiment and see what each effect is doing. So for the first one, we'll test out the drive and we'll have just the drums and bass going on. And we'll see what different drive effects this has. As you can see, there's 65 different circuits that you can choose from, ranging from light gain overdrives and boosts to really high gain distortion and fuzz pedals. I'm not going to go through all 65 of these, just go through a handful, see what sounds interesting. Start this off with the BB preamp. Super crunchy. Try the Fender Blender. Pitch Crusher. Dark Blast Overdrive. This is a bass drive. It's based on the Friedman Buxom Boost. Sounds good, I like that. Full tone OCDs. Boss DS1 classic pedal. Exotic RC booster. Sounds really good, especially with the bass. Fuzz face. Let's check out the Klon Centaur. Super punchy right there. Boss Metal Zone. A bit too much. Big Muff Pie. Coco Rap. Tube Screamer. That sounds really good. This might be my favorite so far. Timmy. So that gives you a good range of sounds you can choose from. Let's leave it back on the tape distortion. And the cool thing that you can also do with the FM3 is you can stack overdrives together, so you've got two drive blocks that you can add, something that you can't do on the Analog Heat+FX. So you can stack these overdrives together and get really, really distorted, crazy sounding sounds with this. It's on the Rat right now. Zen Drive. Another Tube Screamer. King of Tone. fun to do. Experiment with stacking drives if you want really overdriven, distorted tones like this. Just turn this off. Yeah, we'll just leave the tape distortion on. And now let's play with the chorus effect. For this one, I'm gonna turn on a piano sample. Let me increase the mix and the depth of this just so you can really hear the effect. You can set the tempo, the rate of the chorusing. You can really hear it start to warble. Different wave types as well for the LFO. It's on warm stereo right now. Let's try vintage tape. Let's try the CE2. Increasing the number of voices so we can have a more intense chorusing effect. This is with the chorus off. Now, instead of chorus, let's look at some other modulation effects. Let's try Flanger. Pretty interesting. Got that flanging at the very tail end. This is nice for ambient cinematic stuff to add that extra modulation going on. Really get intense there. Now we'll switch this to phaser. As you can see, there's a lot of parameters that you can tweak on each of these effects blocks. listen to some of the wah-wahs here. Basically, you know, it's just a filter going back and forth. This also has an LFO that you can set this to, so that the wah-wah is going opening and closing back and forth on its own with this LFO. Different wah types. You can also control the wah with a expression pedal that you plug in. Now let's check out some of the delay settings. For that one, let me add a delay block here. And for this one, I'll have a guitar sample playing. Let me have it with the delay off first. Let me slow this down just a bit so that we can really hear the delay feedback. Here's with it on now. Start with ambient stereo. You can set the tempo of the repeats. Let's do a dotted eighth. With the mix pretty high, it adds that extra rhythmic thing that the original, just the dry effect, just the dry sound doesn't have. Got that gallopy sound with the dotted eighth notes. Sounds pretty cool. With the dual delay, you can have different repeat times on each side. So you've got a dotted eighth on the left. Let's have just a regular eighth on the other side. Adds to that stereo width by having the delays repeat at different times. Some say lo-fi tape to hear that warbling at the end. You can hear that fluttering and degrading. Yeah, if you really want that crunchy lo-fi tape effect. Turn the delay off. Let's play with the reverb now. For this one, I'll use maybe I'll just have this guitar loop going, another guitar loop. Increase the tempo on this a bit. Let's play with the reverb algorithms a bit. So right now it's on a hall, nothing too big. If we do something like one of these cloud reverbs, increase the mix. You can hear that long reverb tail decaying. Right now the decay time is 24 seconds, which is pretty long. I'm gonna add modulation to the decays. Just increasing the time and the reverb size, we can get something like just a regular hall reverb to be much more lush and just immense sounding. Increase the stereo spread, make it wider. Got more natural sounding reverbs like springs and plate reverb and room reverb, and you just need to add that bit of space and ambience. Now I'm gonna run both the delay and the reverb together. For this one, I'll use maybe I'll use this loop going on here. Now sometimes what you can get when you're running the delay into a really big bloomy reverb like this cloud reverb, it can sound really messy because the delay repeats are hitting the reverb each time, and it's just becoming big and kind of muddy. So something that I like doing, especially with the guitar when I'm playing this live, is having the reverb be on a semi-parallel path with the delay. So I'll just move this up here like that. Connect this. So that the delay is bypassing the reverb, so you kind of have this split signal with your dry signal being split into one going through the delay and then one going into the reverb. And that way the delay repeats are still clear while you still have that lush reverb sound as well. And you can really increase the mix on this more since it's not going to be sounding as muddy. Now another cool thing that the FM3 has that the Analog Heat+FX does not have is a looper. So I'm going to add a looper block right here, and if you are already running a sequencer or synths with sequencers, this might not be as essential, but this is a really cool tool to have, just another thing to add to your arsenal, where you can have, you know, a pattern recorded and then looped, and then you can manipulate that loop. You can change patterns on your synths, have that playing, you know, and then bring in the different pattern. That's something that you can do with the Octatrack as well. But for those who don't have an Octatrack, with the FM3 you can do something similar. So let me bring in that original pattern with all of the instruments again. And this one. We'll record it. Right now I've got the Octatrack off, and everything that you are hearing is coming straight from the FM3. And this will just, you can just have this loop infinitely. You can also record overdubs on this as well. You can have it play in reverse. So that's just a really cool, fun tool that you can add to your arsenal. So the last thing I wanted to show you on the FM3 was this effects block called the Plex Delay. The Plex Delay is a really cool effect, perfect for like cinematic, ambient, granular soundscapes. It's very CPU intensive. As you can see, I've got, this is a new preset. It's only got 4 effects blocks on here, but the CPU is already at about 70%. One thing about the FM3 is that once the CPU usage goes about to like 80–85%, everything just mutes because the CPU has maxed out. So while you're not limited by the number of effects that you can use, you are limited by the amount of CPU that is available to run it. So things like reverbs, amp and cabs, certain overdrives and modulation effects are pretty CPU intensive, whereas other more simpler effects like filter, EQ, delay are not as CPU intensive, so you can add a lot more of those. But the Plex Delay, it's kind of like 4 different effects all in one block. Like we've got modulation, pitch, delay, and reverb. So I'm going to be playing this loop. It's the simple guitar strumming. Then let's run this through the Plex Delay. You can already hear just how it's got that swelling in the background to really fill out the sound. It sounds super lush. Crazier things. It's like shimmer delays. from like Eraserhead or something, David Lynch movie. Sounds super pretty. Delays and reverb. It's cool, it adds like an extra rhythmic component to it. Sub shimmer, so instead of having the pitched reverb, you've got a pitched up reverb, you've got the reverb pitched down. Sounds really nice. So yeah, so those are just some of the sounds and effects that you get with the FM3. There's a lot more that you can do that I haven't covered, but those seem to be just kind of what made most sense in a synth setup when you're running drums and guitars and piano loops through it. So hopefully this was informative and helpful for you all. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Let me know your thoughts, questions, comments below, and check you guys next time.